So we're up to verse 25.
Really?
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, and welcome to the fifth juz of the Quran translation reading, inshallah. So we'll start. We're up to Surah An-Nisa and verse number 24, inshallah. Surah 25, my apologies. So we'll start reading from there, inshallah. Ustaz Sadiq, I'll start reading, inshallah, and we'll take it from there.
Maybe بعد أعوذ بالله بسم الله and a short dua like you like.
inshallah. تفضل.
تفضل.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم تقبل منا، اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا، اللهم ارحمنا وارحم موتانا يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم وفقنا إلى ما تحب وترضى، اللهم وفقنا إلى ما تحب وترضى. اللهم ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم فقهنا في الدين، اللهم فقهنا في الدين. آمين يا رب العالمين. Okay, so let's get started from verse 25, inshallah. So I just shared the screen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Marrying bondwoman. But if any of you cannot afford to marry a free believing woman, then let him marry a believing bondwoman possessed by one of you. Allah knows best the state of your faith and days. You are from one another. So marry them with the permission of their owners, giving them their dowry in fairness if they are chaste, neither promiscuous nor having secret affairs. If they commit indecency after marriage, they receive half the punishment of free women. This is for those of you who fear falling into sin. But if you are patient, it is better for you, and Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. Allah's grace. It is Allah's will to make things clear to you, guide you to the noble ways of those before you, and turn to you in mercy. For Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. And it is Allah's will to turn to you in grace, but those who follow their desires wish to see you deviate entirely from Allah's way. And it is Allah's will to lighten your burdens, for humankind was created weak. Prohibition of abuse. O believers, do not devour one another's wealth illegally, but rather trade by mutual consent. And do not kill each other or yourselves. Surely Allah is ever merciful to you. And whoever does this sinfully or unjustly, we will burn them in the fire. That is easy for Allah. We're still continuing from the okay, so it's going to introduce the inheritance law 5 in the next 2 verses. Avoiding major sins. If you avoid major sins forbidden to you, we will absolve you of your lesser misdeeds and admit you into a place of honor.
This is a very hope-giving ayah. Just avoid the major ones, and inshallah the rest Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will explain.
Yeah, that's coming after the mention of casting a person in the fire as being an easy matter. Always Allah is extending mercy, but at the same time establishing justice.
Inheritance law 5, contentment. And do not crave what Allah has given some of you over others. Man will be rewarded according to their deeds, and woman equally according to theirs. Rather ask Allah for His bounties. Surely Allah has perfect knowledge of all things. And we have appointed ease to what has been left by parents and next of kin. And we have appointed heirs to what has been left by parents and next of kin. As for those you have made a pledge to give them their share. Surely Allah is a witness over all things.
Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to ask Him for His bounties. وَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. So we have to do what we commanded. Allahumma inna nas'aluka min fadlik. Allahumma inna nas'aluka min fadlik. Allahumma inna nas'aluka min fadlik.
Man are the caretakers of women, as men have been provisioned by Allah over women and tasked with supporting them financially. And righteous women are devoutly obedient and, when alone, protective of what Allah has entrusted them with. And if you sense ill conduct from your woman, advise them first. If they persist, do not share their bed, but if they still persist, then discipline them gently. But if they change their ways, do not be unjust to them. Surely Allah is most high, all great.
Obviously, this is a verse that gets talked about a lot. Perhaps we don't need to go into that too much. But the hadith does say a type of hitting that leaves no mark and very small. So that's the main concern here. There are other translations that we can explore, but I'll see how Sheikh Nuhamim Kada says it. Men shall have whole charge of their wives because Allah has favored the one above the other, and because they have spent well of their wealth. So righteous women are lovingly obedient, dutifully keeping everything secure with their husbands when their husbands are gone through Allah's own protection. While those who fear may show rude defiance, first patiently admonish them, then draw away from them in bed, and failing all else, you may finally even strike them. And if they return to obedience, seek no way against them. Verily was Allah ever exalted in might over you, supreme in greatness. No, Mr. Mircha.
You know, just a few minutes, inshallah, or not a few minutes, but a couple minutes if possible. This ayah, it was interesting because I'm part of the British Imams Council, and we have like maybe, even though it became the British Imams Council before, it was not called the British Imams Council, it's called the Multaqa for the Imams and scholars. And so Sheikh Abdullah Hassan from the UK, he did a research on this, and we were kind of pretty much aligned. And it was a group of about, at that time, it was about 200 something Imam scholars, some chaplains as well. So many of the chaplains were Molanas. And then now it's like, I think we're above 300 something, maybe more than that even. And sisters have been included. But at that time, Sheikh Abdullah Hassan, before he started his PhD in psychology, doing a lot of work in Islamic psychology, was debating this point. What does daughter really mean? And people were refusing to acknowledge that the Prophet Muhammad والسلام, never harmed his spouses. So sometimes in the Islamic tradition, there's an excess, unfortunately, and that has to be corrected not by what we want or what we desire, but the prophetic model. And the prophetic model is that he was the best towards his spouses. And so the most that you see, some people don't like that, is the most you see is like a tapping with the miswak without leaving any marks or anything like that. But it's a sign of displeasure. The other issue that comes up is the issue of qawama. Here, the other translation that I have, men are in charge of women. But in reality, is a guardianship of responsibility. And this has caused a lot of issue, because especially today in the contemporary world that we live in, the economic structure doesn't support 100% that one person is able to bring in the income for the family. So, and the reason why I wanted to pause on that is because it causes much distress. We know by data that the number one cause of divorce, at least in the US, maybe we can extend to the rest of the West, is economic issues. And so the other issue comes up, what happens when there's two incomes? So then, as a way to deal with this or mitigate this, we know that the Prophet ﷺ modeled different marriage models. So his marriage to Khadija was not like his marriage to Aisha, alayhi salatu wasalam. And so you see, Khadija was in a different place, a different system, different type of relationship. And you find that sort of fluidity in the Islamic sense among the companions. You know what I'm saying? That there's ways to handle. So the best thing is when we talk about this, yes, there has to be leadership because we're called to have leadership among us. But amruhum shura bainahum shawwarhum fil amr. That at the end of the day, you know, the way to mitigate these things are going to have to be that husband and wife, you know, they're consulting one another with some respect for so authority. It can't be always complete equality on every front, you know, but there has to be, because we believe in equality and dignity. We can't have babies, you know what I'm saying? We, you know, and women can't be without their menstrual cycles. There's certain realities that are built in, that are built in differences. So I don't want to go further than that, but as a way to mitigate that, we have to realize that. We also have to realize that in the prophetic model is very liberatory when it comes to the reality of women. Sometimes in our traditional societies, even sometimes in some traditional writings, it doesn't always match that standard. We acknowledge that. But we have to work this issue out through the boundaries of the Quran and the prophetic model, or else we're just going to go down the same path that every other religion and every other community has gone down in the West. And we're going to end with collapsing the family, and we're going to end with people being isolated as individuals and play with mental health problems because the unit of the family is destroyed. So we have to work that out and acknowledge the issues as they are. Allahu Alam. Sorry for that overextension.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Yusuf. Inshallah. Okay, so verse number 35, reconciling married couples. If you anticipate a split between them, appoint a mediator from his family and another from hers. If they desire reconciliation, Allah will restore harmony between them. Surely Allah is knowing, all aware. The kind, the stingy, and the insincere. Worship Allah alone and associate none with Him. And be kind to parents, relatives, orphans, the poor, near and distant neighbors, close friends, needy travelers, and those bondspeople in your possession. Surely Allah does not like whoever is arrogant, boastful. Those who are stingy promote stinginess among people and withhold Allah's bounties. We have prepared for the disbelievers a humiliating punishment. Likewise, those who spend their wealth to show off and do not believe in Allah or the last day. And whoever takes Satan as an associate, what an evil associate they have. Divine justice. What harm could have come to them if they had believed in Allah and the last day and donated from what Allah has provided for them? And Allah has perfect knowledge of them. Indeed, Allah never wrongs anyone, even by an atom's weight. And if it is a good deed, He will multiply it many times over and will give a great reward out of His grace. Witnesses on Judgment Day. So how will it be when we bring a witness from every faith community and bring you a prophet as a witness against yours? On that day,
Islam was, if I'm not mistaken, once asked Abdullah bin Masud radiallahu anhu to recite this surah to him. And he said, well, how can I recite it to you, Ya Rasulullah, and it was revealed to you? He said, I like to hear it from others. So he started reciting Surah Nisa. And when he came up to this verse, he saw him crying a lot, Prophet ﷺ. I think that's when he stopped Abdullah bin Masud. Like, look at the Prophet's rank as well, that our ummah as ummah, we are a shaheed on other ummahs, and the Prophet ﷺ is a shaheed on all of us. A very tough situation, but also a very honoring situation, I guess. Allahu Alam.
On that day, those who denied Allah and disobeyed the Messenger will wish they were reduced to dust. and they will never be able to hide anything from Allah. Purification before praise. O believers, do not approach prayer while intoxicated until you are aware of what you say, nor in a state of full impurity unless you merely pass through the mosque, until you have bathed. If you are ill, on a journey, or have relieved yourselves, or been intimate with your wives and cannot find water, then purify yourselves with clean earth, wiping your faces and hands. And Allah is ever pardoning or forgiving.
You know, our brothers who follow the Shafi fiqh, they say touching of the woman breaks the wudu. Here it's because the translation you read is if you've been intimate with your partners, but some of the translations, I think Sheikh Nuhamim himself is a Shafi, let's say he translates it. Or have you lain with woman and cannot find water? No, I think he also takes it as touching.
And this verse is the alcohol is still not prohibited at this stage. So this is just asking the believers to stay away from salat when they're intoxicated. So yeah.
This is also one of the main verses why we're doing this Quranic translation, because it says so that you know what you say. So when we stand up in our salat, we want to know what we're saying or what the Imam is saying. Based on a bit sort of inspired by this verse, we're doing this program. So inshallah, we know what we're saying.
So
We can all learn Arabic. Anyone watching this, anyone listening to this, people learn languages. I've seen young people learn Spanish for the sake of a job. Many of our friends in America, to get a job in IT in 6 months, they learn the whole software language. So learning Arabic is actually very, very doable. And there's so many programs out there. It's not a fard, but if someone wants to.
Actually, you know, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, he considered it to be an obligation.
Oh, really?
Yes, the majority of the scholars, of course, they're not going to say it, but he said that because the gist of it, because the Quran and the Sunnah are in Arabic, you know, then we're obligated to know the Deen. Then because we're obligated to know the Deen, the only way would be to come to the language. And to be honest with you, I'm of the point that we should put the pressure on the people. Some are going to make it, some are not, but the high standard or should be there as a basic standard. Just this crisis of the Ummah, what the crisis of the Ummah is in its varieties, especially on the educational level. Those of us in the West, we need to put a high priority on the Arabic language. Because what will happen is that we will depend on translations, and our children will be so distant away from any sort of communal practice of Islam. Most of us won't experience 5 days daily prayer in community, except maybe on the weekends, if that. So there's a lot of circumstances overall in the Ummah and localized within the Western communities that demand that we raise the bar in literacy above where it's at. Because where it's at right now, it's very low level, and it's easy to knock a person off of their practice of the Deen life situations or complicated intellectual arguments. And I'm not saying that as a pitch, but Isra has its own programs and others as well, but it's a necessity. And I say that as a person that has sacrificed to study some of the Arabic language, and I see the difference in my own life with the ability to be able to go in between the translations and the Arabic and get a different insight. So if we sacrifice for other things, why not sacrifice for our lifestyle as Muslims? I don't know what more can be said about that.
Sheikh Yusuf said he was part of the British Muslim Councils. Can we have him as part of the Australian Imams Council as well?
Inshallah, why not?
If
they accept.
We need to have some of these views more over here. We have great Imams. It would be a great addition, Sheikh Yusuf.
Inshallah. Warning against divines. Have you, O Prophet, not seen those who were given a portion of the scriptures, yet trade it for misguidance and wish to see you deviate from the right path? Allah knows best who your enemies are, and Allah is sufficient as a guardian, and He is sufficient as a helper. Humility with the Prophet. Some Jews take words out of context and say, "We listened and we disobey." He may you never hear. And Ra'ina heard us playing with words and discrediting the faith. Had they said courteously, "We hear and obey, listen to us, and unzurna, tend to us," it would have been better for them and more proper. Allah has condemned them for their disbelief, so they do not believe except for a few. Reward for rejecting the truth. O you who were given the book, believe in what we have revealed, confirming your own scriptures before we wipe out your faces, turning them backwards, or we condemn the defiant as we did to the Sabbath breakers. And Allah's command is always executed. Indeed, Allah does not forgive associating others with Him in worship, but forgives anything else of whoever He wills. And whoever associates others with Allah has indeed committed a grave sin.
Here it says, and whoever associates anything with Allah has fabricated a monstrous iniquity. I think that's also more closer to the word iftara. Fabricated a monstrous inequity. Ithman azima.
Self-righteousness. Have you, O Prophet, not seen those who falsely elevate themselves? It is Allah who elevates whoever He wills, and none will be wronged even by the width of the thread of a date stone. See how they fabricate lies against Allah. This alone is a blatant sin.
In another verse it says, وَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Don't purify yourselves. And don't try to work hard to show how pure or innocent you are. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, even the prophets and the great awliya, they would not purify themselves. Yusuf alayhi salam waited till others went and freed his name from the wrongdoing.
Subhanallah.
These are all linked verses in a way: humility, rejecting the truth, going down the shirk way, then claiming self-righteousness. So yeah. False reassurance. Have you, O Prophet, not seen those who are given a portion of the scriptures, yet believe in idols and false gods, and reassure the disbelievers that they are better guided than the believers? It is they who have been condemned by Allah, and whoever is condemned by Allah will have no helper.
This, according to some narrations, was what Ka'b al-Ashraf, although we don't like to call him that. A great scholar calls him Ka'b al-Ardhal, the treacherous Jewish person. His fortress was right outside of Medina, and his fortress, you can still see it if you go to Medina, out on the outskirts. When he went to Quraysh, the Quraysh used to look up to the Jews because they had the book before, they had the divine books, and they had the knowledge. So they had this inferiority complex to the Jews, the Meccans. So they asked them, who's more guided, these new Muslims or us? And he responded, obviously, we forget, he used to go to Mecca to incite them to wage war and get their revenge for Badr. And they say, some scholars of Sirah, he played a critical role for the play taking place of Uhud. Eventually he gets killed. Sometimes Muslims think he got killed just because he said a few bad words about the Prophet. It's not just that, there's a whole treachery behind that. But when he was Mecca, he was asked, who's better, the believers or the polytheists? And he said these horrible words. هؤلاء أهدى من الذين آمنوا سبيلا.
Sheikh Yusuf, would you like to continue reading?
Okay.
We're up to verse
Punishment.
number 53. Yep.
Huh?
Envy breeds disbelief. Verse number 53.
Envy breeds disbelief. Do they have control over shares of the kingdom? If so, they would not have given anyone so much as the speck on a date stone. Or do they envy the people for Allah's bounties? Indeed, we have given the descendants of Abraham the book and wisdom along with great authority. Yet some believed in him while others turned away from him. Hell is sufficient as a torment. Punishment of the disbelievers. Surely those who reject our signs, we will cast them into the fire. Whenever their skin is burnt completely, we will replace it so they will constantly taste the punishment. Indeed, Allah is Almighty, All-Wise, reward of the believers. As for those who believe and do good, we will admit them into gardens under which rivers flow, to stay there forever and ever. There they will have pure spouses, and we will place them under a vast shade. Maintaining justice. Indeed, Allah commands you to return trust to their rightful owners. And when you judge between people, judge with fairness, with a noble commandment from Allah to you. Surely Allah is hearing, all-seeing, divine judgment. O believers, obey Allah and obey the Messenger and those in authority among you. Should you disagree on anything, then refer it to Allah and His Messenger. If you truly believe in Allah and the Last Day, this is the best and fairest resolution. Hypocrites rejecting divine judgment.
Just a quick one on, and those in authority among you, ulil amr, and here it says, and those in true authority of you. The majority opinion of the Sahaba and of the tafsir scholars is that it refers to the scholars of this ummah. So to use the Ottoman language, not the Sultan, but Shaykh al-Islam, like the scholar. And in 2 pages or 1 more page, this word is gonna appear again, and there it becomes even more clear. And if there's a difference amongst you, refer to the ulul amr, the people that make istinbat of the hukum. And no one makes an istinbat except for a mujtahid. So sometimes we have to understand this because these verses are always sometimes used to sort of preach a type of obedience to leaders that has no place in Islam. The Prophet clearly said, "Afdalul jihadi qawlul haqqi inna sultana ja'ir." The best type of jihad is to speak the word of truth in front of an oppressive ruler. Allahu Alam.
Even this, like when you look at the hadith, the Din al-Nasiha, and the Sahaba, how they understood it was as an action. In Nasiha, they understood it as an action. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he firstly said it for Allah. We usually translate it as sincerity. It's really an untranslatable or intranslatable term. Even in the Arabic language, it's complicated because of it having no other equivalent. It's a word jam-packed with meaning. But ultimately in the hadith, it says that there's leadership, that there should be an upholding of the rights of leadership, and that's what the hadith points to or alludes to, and that also that there should be care for the general community. So this is always a perpetual question, especially in the West. It comes up periodically. Not to go too deep into the issue of imama, but we're told to govern our affairs by consultation and knowledge, and then we see in many places the importance of authority. And so at the end of the day, the issue of authority coming from organizing the community becomes extremely important. We see how important that is when it comes to the issue of praying Eid or collecting the zakat or just organizing the salah in the jama'ah on the basics, or just having an organizational structure that can be dependable so we can send our children to an educational facility as trustworthy. So I think, one of the things for Muslims in the West, if we go with the opinion of Imam al-Juwayni and we combine it with what you were saying, there has to be some sort of collective organizational effort that becomes an authority for the Muslim community, composed of the ulama and others. But we're lost on both sides pretty much because the role for the scholar is limited in the West, the role for the imam. And at the same time, at least in North America, we have serious organizational crises. But we're told here, part of the faith is this reality of having an authority. We don't need it to be an absolute authority, but we definitely need an authority to organize ourselves.
Sheikh Yusuf, you were reading, study.
Hypocrites rejecting divine judgment. Have you, O Prophet, not seen those who claim they believe in what has been revealed to you and what was revealed before you? They seek the judgment of false judges, which they were commanded to reject. And Satan only desires to lead them farther away. When it is said to them, come to Allah's revelations and to the messenger, you see the hypocrites turn away from you stubbornly. How horrible will it be if a disaster strikes them because of what their hands have done? Then they come to you swearing by Allah. We intended nothing but goodwill and reconciliation. Only Allah knows what is in their hearts. So turn away from them, caution them, and give them advice that will shake their very souls. Obeying the messenger. We only sent messengers to be obeyed by Allah's will. If only those hypocrites came to you, O Prophet, after wronging themselves, seeking Allah's forgiveness, and the messenger prayed for their forgiveness, they would have certainly found Allah ever accepting of repentance, most merciful. Unconditional obedience. But no, by your Lord, they will never be true believers until they accept you, O Prophet, as the judge in their disputes and find no resistance within themselves against your decision and submit wholeheartedly. If we had commanded them to sacrifice themselves or abandon their homes, none would have obeyed except for a few. Had they done what they were advised to do, it would have certainly been far better for them and more reassuring. And we would have granted them a great reward by our grace and guided them to the straight path. Reward for obedience. And whoever obeys Allah and the Messenger will be in the company of those blessed by Allah, the prophets, the people of truth, the martyrs, and the righteous. What an honorable company. This is Allah's favor, and Allah fully knows who deserves it. Advice to the army.
This verse 69, whenever we say ihdinas Sirat mustaqim, Sirat alladhina an'amta alayhim, guide us to the path you've blessed. Most of the Mufassirin, a lot of them bring up this verse. Alladhina an'ama Allahu alayhim min al-nabiyyin, the prophets was siddiqeen, the truthful people, was shuhada, was salihin. Ustad Sayyid Nursi rahmatullah alayhi beautifully says this verse also implicitly alludes to the Khulafai Rashidin, the Prophet coming first, then the Siddiq, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, and then the Shuhada has to be minimum 3 for it to be plural. Sayyidina Umar, Uthman, wa Ali. And then he also says out of the Quran's beautiful words, when it says, وَحَسِنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا, and how great are those as a companion. The word Hassan refers to the 6 months of the Khilafah of Sayyidina Hassan, the Prophet's grandson, which completes the 30 years of Khulafai Rashidin, which the Prophet said, alaykum, hadith, alaykum sunnati wa sunnati Khulafai Rashidin addu alayhi bin nawajid. So the verse sort of perfectly points to that in a way. This is ishari tafsir, obviously, not a direct tafsir, but indications by the words and the choice of words. Allahu
Akbar. Advice to the army. O believers, take your precautions and go forth either in groups or together. There will be some among you who will lag behind, so that if you face a disaster, they will say Allah has blessed us for not being there among them. But if you return with Allah's bounties, they will say, as if there had been no bond between you, we wish we had been there with them to share the great gain. Fighting against oppression. Let those who would sacrifice this life for the hereafter fight in the cause of Allah. And whoever fights in Allah's cause, whether they achieve martyrdom or victory, we will honor them with a great reward. And what is it with you? You do not fight in the cause of Allah and for oppressed men, women, and children who cry out.
So here's Sheikh Yusuf and Brother Ahmed. أستاذ أحمد فليقاتل في سبيل الله الذين يشرون الحياة الدنيا في الآخرة. يشرون يعني they buy the hereafter. No. They sell this
Still, yeah.
and they buy the hereafter. That's what يشرون is buy. Sometimes these words get used interchangeably. It's a bit, I get confused myself. You have to be إن الله اشترى من المؤمنين أنفسهم. Right? Allah has bought from the believers themselves. Here يشرون الحياة الدنيا. They sell this worldly life for the hereafter.
Yeah, it's a continual process.
Yeah.
Because of it being a mudara is an action with continuity. It could have been used in the past tense, but because it's used in the present tense and with the implicit future in it, it's something that they do with continuity.
No.
Like it's not a one-time thing. It's a perpetual struggle.
Yeah, that's true. In the fi'l mudari. No. Shaykhana.
And what is it with you? You do not fight in the cause of Allah and for oppressed men, women, and children who cry out, our Lord, deliver us from this land of oppressors. Appoint for us a Savior. Appoint for us a helper, all by your grace.
اللهم انصر إخواننا في فلسطين وفي غزة واخذل من يريد خذلان الدين.
Fighting Satan's allies. Believers fight for the cause of Allah, whereas disbelievers fight for the cause of the devil. So fight against Satan's evil forces. Indeed, Satan's schemes are ever weak. Those who cower.
This is also a reminder that sometimes we think, okay, believers, we have to spend for the sake of hidayah, for the sake of propagation. Whereas the unbelievers, they just spend on themselves and their shahawat and their dunya. But it's actually not true. The unbelievers, this is not just unbelievers, those who are keen on unbelief, they actually spend a lot in preventing people believing. They actually fight, they actually make juhud, they plan. This surah is all talking about this. They're very active, sometimes much more active than believers are in inviting. Yeah, the enemies don't stay idle too long.
Those who cower, have you, O Prophet, not seen those who had been told?
So your voice is a little bit thing for me. Is that just me, or Ustaz Ahmed? You see,
it's okay.
What about now?
bring it a bit closer, perhaps. Yeah, or speak slightly higher.
Have you, O Prophet, is that better?
A little bit better, yeah.
Have you, O Prophet, not seen those who had been told, do not fight, rather establish prayer and pay alms tax? Then once the order came to fight, a group of them feared those hostile people as Allah should be feared. Or even more, they said, our Lord, why have you ordered us to fight? If only you had delayed the order for us for a little while. Say, O Prophet, the enjoyment of this world is so little, whereas the hereafter is far better for those mindful of Allah. And none of you will be wronged even by the width of the thread of a date stone. Divine destiny. Wherever you may be, death will overcome you, even if you were in fortified towers. When something good befalls them, they say this is from Allah, but when something evil befalls them, they say this is from you. Say, O Prophet, both have been destined by Allah. So what? So what is the matter with these people? So what is the matter with these people? They can hardly comprehend anything. Whatever good befalls you is from Allah, and whatever evil befalls you is from yourself. We have sent you, O Prophet, as a messenger to all people, and Allah is sufficient as a witness, obeying the messenger. Whoever obeys the messenger has truly obeyed Allah. But whoever turns away, they know that we have not sent you, O Prophet, as a keeper over them. And they say we obey, but when they leave you, a group of them would spend the night contradicting what they said. Allah records all their schemes. So turn away from them and put your trust in Allah. And Allah is sufficient as a trustee of affairs, reflecting on the Quran. Do they not
Allah
then reflect?
and Allah records all their schemes. Yubayyitun. Now, just this one, whoever obeys the messenger has indeed obeyed Allah. It's just a reminder as well that following the Sunnah and the Prophet's and Hadith are so important. Never in the Quran does it say obey Allah without it saying obey the messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But there are times where it says obey the messenger without saying obey Allah. And obviously, a lot of the times it's atiullah wa rasul, obey both of them. So obeying the messenger, some people say we only follow the Quran, but we see in verses like this, the Quran itself orders us to follow the Prophet and his Sunnah. Allah.
Yeah, Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi alayhi, he built himself on that reality of defending this point that you're talking about. And not that the other Imams did it, but he put to pen, he articulated, he attempted to clarify this point of the necessity of knowing the relationship of the Prophet to the Quran, in specific the Prophet's والسلام's actions and statements, so on and so forth. And we know that without seerah, without the life of the Prophet, tafsir becomes almost impossible in the real sense. It becomes piecemeal. Reflecting on the Quran, do they not then reflect on the Quran? Had it been from anyone other than Allah, they would have certainly found in it many inconsistencies, spreading rumors. And when they hear news of security or fear, they publicize it. Had they referred it to the messenger or their authorities, those with sound judgment among them would have validated it. Had it not been for Allah's grace and mercy, you would have followed Satan, except for a few. Show strength. So fight
here again, the word al-amr comes up, but as you can see, it says, had they referred the matter to the Prophet or those in authority, or we can understand those scholars, لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنْبِتُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ. Those who make istinbat, which is like another word, you can say synonym to ijtihad, they would have known it. But these days, mashallah, our sultans are high school graduates who recite the Quran and their wives wear hijabs, but they don't know the difference between halal and haram, so on. That's why it has to refer to scholars, those who can make istinbat of the ahkam and the qawaid al-shari'iyya. Allahu alam.
Show strength. So fight in the cause of Allah, O Prophet. You are accountable for none but yourself. And motivate the believers to fight, so perhaps Allah will curb the disbelievers' might. And Allah is far superior in might and in punishment. Good and evil intercession. Whoever intercedes for a good cause will have a share in the reward. And whoever intercedes for an evil cause will have a share in the burden. And Allah is watchful over all things, responding to greetings. And when you are greeted, respond with a better greeting, or at least similarly. Surely Allah is a vigilant reckoner of all things. This has actually is one of the things that has disappeared in the Muslim world and in Muslim communities. The reality of the salam. And the Prophet ﷺ had noted that to be a starting point for love being generated in our hearts for each other. But you can go and you can see it's a complaint that many people have. Uh, People have taken it as very customary. Sometimes you're in a shopping center and you give salams and there's nothing returned back. Where we know the ruling is that to give the salam, is not an obligation, but to return the salam is an obligation. And so here the Quran says, and when you are greeted, respond with a better greeting, or at least similarly. Uh, Surely Allah is vigilant,
And we know
reckoner of all things.
the hadith of the Prophet, if someone says Assalamu alaikum, you say alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. And if they say that, you add wa barakatuh. It's not just in quantity, it's in quality as well. People have said,
Right.
as Muslims, we should always try to do bare minimum equal, if not more. So maybe with a level of excitement and warmness. Just on verse 85, whoever intercedes for a good cause will have a share in the reward, and whoever intercedes for an evil cause will have a share in the burden. It might be hard to understand that. Sheikh Noam Kalla says it the following way. Whoever steps in to join man upon good shall be rewarded its full magnificent share, while whoever steps in to join man upon evil shall bear its appalling deserts, he said. Yeah.
Assembly for Judgment Day. Allah, there is no God worthy of worship except Him. He will certainly gather all of you together on the Day of Judgment, about which there is no doubt, and whose word is more truthful, than Allah's. Stance on hypocrites. Why are you believers divided into two groups regarding the hypocrites, while Allah allowed them to regress to disbelief because of their misdeeds? Do you wish to guide those left by Allah to stray? And whoever Allah leaves to stray, you will never find for them a way. They wish you would disbelieve as they have disbelieved. So you may all be alike. So do not take them as allies unless they immigrate in the cause of Allah. But if they turn away, then seize them and kill them wherever you find them, and do not take any of them as allies or helpers, except those who are allies of a people you are bound with in a treaty, or those wholeheartedly opposed to fighting either you or their own people. If Allah had willed, He would have empowered them to fight you. So if they refrain from fighting you and offer you peace, then Allah does not permit you to harm them. You will find others who wish to be safe from you and their own people, yet they cannot resist the temptation of disbelief or hostility. If they do not keep away, offer you peace, or restrain from attacking you, then seize them and kill them wherever you find them. We have given you full permission over such people. Killing a believer unintentionally. It is not lawful for a believer to kill another except by mistake. And whoever kills a believer unintentionally must free a believing slave and pay blood money to the victim's family, unless they waive it charitably. But if the victim is a believer from a hostile people, then a believing slave must be freed. And if the victim is from a people bound with you in a treaty, then blood money must be paid to the family along with freeing of a believing slave. Those who are unable, let them fast 2 consecutive months as a means of repentance to Allah. And Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. Killing a believer intentionally. And whoever kills a believer intentionally, their reward will be hell, where they will stay indefinitely. Allah will be displeased with them, condemn them, and will prepare for them a tremendous punishment. Random fighting. O believers, when you struggle in the cause of Allah, be sure of who you fight. And do not say to those who offer you greetings of peace, you are no believer, seeking a fleeting worldly gain. Instead, Allah has infinite bounties in store. You were initially like them, then Allah bless you with Islam. So be sure, indeed Allah is all aware of what you do, struggling in Allah's cause. Those who stay at home, except
Sorry,
those with a...
Sheikh Yusuf, this one is perhaps there could have been a financial incentive for the companions to sometimes not quickly accept people's claim that they're Muslims. Sometimes there's financial incentives in war. You get spoils of war. But the Quran is very careful, saying, be very careful. The moment you hear any sign of people being Muslims, and the salam, I don't know if there's other recitations because the alif is, it's the alif thing, the dagger alif. There could be other qira'ats that might have silm, Allahu Alam. Yeah, we have to be very careful on this in military matters. فَتَبَيَّنُوا وَتَثَبَّتُوا.
Killing a believer intentionally, and whoever kills a believer intentionally, their reward will be hell, where they will stay indefinitely. Allah will be displeased with them, condemn them, and will prepare for them a tremendous punishment. Random fighting. O believers, when you struggle in the cause of Allah, be sure of who you fight. And do not say to those who offer you greetings of peace, you are no believer, seeking a fleeting worldly gain. Instead, Allah has infinite bounties in store. You were initially like them. Then Allah blessed you with Islam. So be sure, indeed, Allah is all aware of what you do, struggling in the cause of Allah. Those who stay at home, except those with valid excuses, are not equal to those who strive in the cause of Allah with their wealth and their lives. Allah has elevated and ranked those who strive with their wealth and their lives above those who stay behind with valid excuses. Allah has promised each a fine reward, but those who strive will receive a far better reward than others, far superior ranks, forgiveness and mercy from Him, and Allah is all forgiving, most merciful, yielding to oppression.
Can you see the way this verse 95 is written? Those who stay at home, parenthesis, except those with valid excuses, end parenthesis, are not equal to those who strive. When this verse was revealed, it's narrated in hadith that what was the famous companion who was the mu'adhin but he was blind? What is his name?
Abdullah.
Maktoum.
No. He came to our Prophet and said, Ya Rasulallah, what's my share? Like, what have I done? And then that parenthesis thing, says in the narration, was revealed. Jibreel came and revealed that parenthesis separately. And it was part of the Quran. So, لا يستوي القاعدون من المؤمنين. And then, غير أولي الضرر was revealed, except for those who have some sort of excuses, like they're blind and all that. And the verse continues.
And we know the hadith where the Prophet says there's people who are left behind. When you walk a valley, or whatever you tread in the path, that they will take they are with you and they'll take their share. So, yeah.
It's interesting that you bring that up, Dr. Sadiq, your point, because a lot of times we don't realize the importance of studying the lives of the companions and how it is that those scenarios and they're interacting with the Prophet ﷺ are not necessarily going to come up in the prophetic biography 100%. But when you study the lives of the Prophet, the lives of the companions, you find so much that adds on to questions that one may have and gives the background knowledge. Even I found that the case when you study the life of Omar or even Khalid bin Walid or something like that, you see so much more that's missing, the backdrop. And so we thank you for bringing that point up. Yielding to oppression, when the angel sees the souls of those who have wronged themselves, scolding them, what do you think you were doing? They will reply, we were oppressed in the land. The angels will respond, was Allah's earth not spacious enough for you to emigrate? SubhanAllah. If you think about the reality of today versus yesterday, the reality of today is that we've built structures that don't allow people to seek of the bounty of Allah to the earth. But they have to go through immigration and so on and so forth. They have to cross borders. But other than that, the mercy of Allah and the care and compassion is very manifest. If we remove the idea of how humans have limited the land, in terms of having state borders and all that. It makes it very clear that the mercy of Allah is manifest. Allah doesn't wish for people to be oppressed, but it's us in our ethics, in our lifestyle, that perpetuates that. Just in case people question why, is there oppression on the earth, it's due to our hands. It's due to our hands.
But I also wonder if we can also look at this verse. Sometimes people might be in places where there's a lot of pressure on them and they can't practice their religion, maybe at work, or maybe at a particular place. Just moving about in the land. I know Sheikh Yusuf said moving countries can be difficult, but let's say if you're in America or even in other places, you can move suburbs, you can move cities, and if someone does that for the sake of their religion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses that journey. And Allah's earth is very vast. You can travel. Anyone who does that, they will find. Sometimes we do it because, where am I going to find a job? Where am I going to get rizq? Because of these worldly concerns, Allah's saying, just go. I can provide for you.
And if you just look at the history, I think, sorry, Sheikh Yusuf, quickly, of those who immigrated, they've always, most of the time, found wealth as well.
Yeah.
There's
Opportunity.
many stories. Exactly, yeah. So
Actually, not to bring up a controversial point, but the famous Shi'i intellectual Ali Shariati, he was a professor of sociology and wrote on the sociology of Islam. And he talked about the power of hijrah in history from a sociological point. And so we have seen that when the Muslim world, for instance, if you look at the time of when Iraq was a great civilization for the Muslims, when it began to collapse, some of those scholars went to Egypt and some of them went to Delhi, or Delhi. And then those communities rose. The same thing is happening in our time period, and that the Muslims are migrating for various reasons, whether it's health reasons, economic or political, into the West. And that's why we were pointing back to being conscious of education. So I think that we need to also look at what is going to be the consequence of our migration and what are we contributing to building the community. But historically, when the Muslims migrated, usually it meant the flourishing of Muslims in another place. Now, today's time can cause a series of problems with the issue of resources and so on and so forth. But I think that's where the idea of authority and the idea of thinking through these things becomes important, right? And we know, and Dr. Sadiq and I were doing about almost a year's study of the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, and we know that tangibly the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was extremely strategic. He planned out the affairs of the Muslims, and that's something that we're lacking in today's time. So here we go back. He said, we were, the angels asked and they questioned, we were oppressed in the land. The angels asked, what do you think you were doing? They will reply, we were oppressed in the land. The angels will respond, was Allah's earth not spacious enough for you to immigrate? It is they who will have hell as their home. What an evil destination, except helpless men, women, and children who cannot afford a way out. It is right to hope that Allah will pardon them. It is right to hope that Allah will pardon them. For Allah is ever pardoning, all forgiving, migrating in the Allah's cause. Whoever immigrates in the cause of Allah.
Like Allah's rahmah, فَأُولَٰئِكَ عَسَى اللَّهُ أَنْ يَعْفُوَ عَنْهُمْ. Whenever the word asa is used for Allah's rahmah, it's almost, you can expect it. It's very promising. It's almost like a promising.
Migrating in Allah's cause. Whoever immigrates in the cause of Allah will find many safe havens and bountiful resources throughout the earth. Those who leave their homes and die while immigrating to Allah and His Messenger, their reward has already been secured with Allah. And Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. And the point that you made is extremely important. the point that you made, Dr. Sadiq. Sorry, Ustad Ahmed. The point is that we need to think like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be that we migrate to other countries, but to other spots and places, even within our own country or within our own zone. And it would be great if we thought like that as a collective of Muslims. And if we went and we journeyed and we said we were going to go to this area, we were going to get involved in the school system, we were going to build housing, we were going to build economy, like that. We don't, and I think that unfortunately, that's why we talked about the issue of the imama. A lot of people go immediately to think khilafah, but they don't think about just building communities and contributing to community building. Which would be a very easy, most beneficial target to build a model community, not only for the Muslims but even for the non-Muslims.
Sheikh Yusuf, maybe we'll let you read one more verse and then maybe we'll pass it to Ustad Sadiq. But just before that, I also wanted to mention I have people that I know who are immigrating to some Muslim countries with the hope that they can snap out of, let's say, this society or whatever cycle they're in. But I've seen quite a few of them come back as well at the same time. So I think this, as you said, Sheikh Yusuf, these building communities where you are, especially in the West, we're part and parcel of this land now, is crucial for Islam to continue to flourish and to preserve our own identity as Muslims in this country. So, yeah.
Sometimes it's done with the protection of exposing the children to Islamic culture and all that. But sometimes it's done because there's good oil money in those countries and tax-free income. So.
That's fine, but if the idea is the grass is greener on the other side, we just don't see that reality. And I don't want to take long on this, but I think it's important to impression. We ourselves in the U.S. went through a whole phase where people were migrating out. I myself even had intended that at one point in time. And it's not just the issue of hearing the adhan, facilitating the salah, but then when you have the encounter, what do you do when you have to go to the hospital? When you realize that a great percentage of people are being butchered or they're dying in the hospital, or it could be your child. And then you realize the infrastructural issues of the Muslim world. So we ourselves have to think, and we have to weigh these things very heavily. It's not just the issue that we read a text and we have to know how to apply it properly. Because in the past we made so many mistakes. Sheikh Ahmed, I was going to ask actually to be excused because I'm traveling. Pray for my. I request dua. I have a relative that's dying. I have a relative that just died. My daughter was just in the hospital, and my stepfather just came out of a surgery. So it's a little challenging time right now. So
give you strength and patience.
Please make dua for them as well. Make dua for them. They need it the most, inshallah.
Just before you go, this verse is addressing you, Sheikh Yusuf. You said you're traveling. It says, when you travel through the land, it is permissible for you to shorten the prayer. If you're an attack believers, indeed the disbelievers are your sworn enemies.
Have a safe trip, Sheikh Yusuf.
Okay, inshallah. We'll regroup, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair to everyone, and thanks for being patient with us. Assalamu
alaikum. Ustad Sadiq, do you want to continue from
this verse that I just read? When you travel through the land, it is permissible for you to shorten the prayer, especially if you fear an attack by the disbelievers. Indeed, the disbelievers are sworn enemies. One of the younger companions came to Sayyidina Umar and said, why do we shorten our prayers? We're now safe. Islam is spread over everywhere, And Sayyidina Umar said, I had the same exact question and I asked the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet said, when Allah gives you a sadaqah, accept Allah's sadaqah. And that's why, again, this language sort of reminds us of the verse that says about Safa wa Marwa. It says, there's no sin on you to shorten it. But the actual intended meaning is you should shorten it. It's not something, it's more righteous to shorten it than not to shorten it. As opposed to fasting, siyam, whereas fasting and traveling, and tasumu khayrul lakum. If you were to fast, it's better for you. But you cannot fast while you're traveling.
It's permission.
Yeah. Praying in a state of fear. When you, a prophet, are campaigning with them and you lead them in prayer, let one group of them pray with you while armed. When they prostrate themselves, let the other group stand guard behind them. Then the group that has not yet prayed will then join you in prayer, and let them be vigilant and armed. The disbelievers would wish to see you neglect your weapons and belongings, so they could launch a sweeping assault on you. But there is no blame if you lay aside your weapons when overcome by heavy rain or illness. But take precaution. Indeed, Allah has prepared a humiliating punishment for the disbelievers. When the prayers are over, remember Allah, whether you are standing, sitting, or lying down. But when you are secure, establish regular prayers. Indeed, performing prayers is a duty on the believers at the appointed times. This verse, one of my friends, he's a graduate of Azhar, he pointed something. Again, you can't see this in English, but in the Arabic, in the original Quran, he said, when it comes to the Prophet ﷺ leading the prayers, the word iqama is used. فَأَقَمْتَ لَهُمُ الصَّلَاةَ. But when it comes to the rest of the companions, they just yusalluna salat, like the word yusallu is used. It's like almost honoring the Prophet and the Prophet's prayers. Because normally praying and nusalli salatan is not the same as an establishing the prayer. Because establishing the prayer means all its internal conditions and outward conditions. But also the first time it says, let them take their weapons, the first one, in the first rakat. The second one says, let them take their weapons and let them take precaution. So I don't know, it's a bit of a subtle thing. The first one says, just let them take their weapons. The next one says, let them be vigilant and take their weapons. It just goes to show that in sort of like the enemy is constantly learning and observing. So you have to constantly update your tactics as well. There is this both sides. And you could apply this in life as well.
Yeah, also like with salat, I think this is salat instead of fee. Like when we look at other pillars of Islam, zakat, if you don't have the money, you don't pay. Hajj, you don't have the means, you don't go. But with salat, there's no excuse in whatever state you're in, right? The scholars even have talked about how to pray when you have no clothes on, right? Like, so this is one pillar which cannot be neglected in any situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
When, diligence against. Yeah. Do not falter in pursuit of the enemy. If you are suffering, they too are suffering. But you can hope to receive from Allah what they can never hope for. And Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. If you're hurt, they're hurt too. But you're expecting something, the Jannah, that they're not even expecting. So when you go through your hurt while you're expecting this Jannah, it's nothing compared to them going through the same hurt and they're expecting just non-existence. It cannot be compared. Justice to a Jew. This is very important because the verse doesn't explicitly say it, but the context of the verse is about a situation where one companion wrongfully accuses a Jewish person of having stolen his equipment, his sword or something, and then these verses come revealing the innocence of the Jewish person and the wrong action of that Muslim companion. Indeed, we have sent down the book to you, O Prophet, in truth, to judge between people by means of what Allah has shown you. So do not be an advocate for the deceitful. وَلَا تَكُنْ لِلْخَائِنِينَ خَصِيمًا. Or the traitor, never be an advocate for them. And seek Allah's forgiveness. Indeed, Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Do not advocate for those who wrong themselves. Surely Allah does not like those who are deceitful, sinful. Surely Allah does not. They try to hide their deception from people, but they can never hide it from Allah, in whose presence they plot by night what is displeasing to Him. And Allah is fully aware of what they do. Here you believers are advocating for them in this life, but who will dare to advocate for them before Allah on the Day of Judgment, or who will come to their defense? No. After sin, whoever commits evil or wrongs themselves, then seeks Allah's forgiveness, will certainly find Allah all-forgiving, most merciful. And whoever commits a sin, it is only to their own loss. Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. And whoever commits an evil or sinful deed, then blames it on an innocent person, they will definitely bear the guilt of slander and blatant sin. فَقَدْ احْتَمَلَ بُهْتَانًا وَإِثْمًا مُبِينًا. So to blame something on an innocent person, I think that was still connected to the previous story. We didn't go into the details of it, but those who wish to, they can see the tafsir of it. Allah's grace to the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Just sorry, on the previous part, so like, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about punishment, and always opens the door for forgiveness, mercy, return. In another part of the Quran, it says, "Inna Allah yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a." Allah forgives all sins. Everything has a return, and Allah always keeps that door open. We see it's such a Quranic theme, I think.
Yeah. And here, this is the verse before we just, if you want to be very detailed of the Quran, in verses 111 and 112 that we just read, whoever commits a sin, the word used for committing here, both times, is the word kasaba, وَمَنْ يَكْسِبْ. Normally, that word is used for positive things, where the word that's used for committing wrong deeds is iktasaba. It's got an extra ta. That's why laha ma kasabat wa alayha maktasabat. Whatever good it's done, it's for it, and whatever bad is done, it's for itself. Here, when the other word is being used, that's normally done for good deeds, commits, but it's being used for a sin, some have said this could indicate that they did these actions thinking that they're doing good. There's a subtlety that comes with that language, if you look at it from that language. So, yeah. Allah's grace to the Prophet. Had it not been for Allah's grace and mercy, a group of them would have sought to deceive you, O Prophet. So, I don't know if the English conveys it, but had it not been for Allah's grace and mercy on you, O Prophet, a group of them would have sought to deceive you. Yet they would deceive none but themselves, nor can they harm you in the least. Allah has revealed to you the book and wisdom and taught you what you never knew. Great indeed is Allah's favor upon you. Now, secret talks. There is no good in most of their secret talks except those encouraging charity, kindness, or reconciliation between people. And whoever does this seeking Allah's pleasure will grant him a great reward.
I think this verse is important, especially when it comes to backbiting, talking on others behind. It does tell us the exceptions. Otherwise, most of us can fall into backbiting very quickly, and it's something that's sweet. And Shaitan keeps poking us with that, I think. And we have to be very, very careful when we talk about people or individuals or groups or organizations, which is even worse, so that we keep these in mind, inshallah.
Yeah, we have three things to have secret gatherings. Either we encourage charity, general kindness or good actions, or reconciliation between people. Sometimes even for the sake of, we might think we might have these gatherings for the sake of um, guiding people, but we end up just doing backbiting. Hafizanallah.
Allah protect us.
Opposing the messenger, and whoever defies the messenger after guidance has become clear to them and follows a path other than that of the believers, we will let them pursue what they have chosen, then burn them in hell. What an evil end. Sheikh Yusuf, before when you mentioned, may Allah give shifa and have mercy on his dead relatives, and those who are alive, have mercy on them. He mentioned Imam Shafi. If I'm not mistaken, Imam Shafi said, I look for the Quran for the proof for ijma, this consensus. And he kept looking, then he found it in this verse. And whoever defies the messenger after guidance has become clear to them and follows a path other than that of the believers. وَمَنْ يُشَاقِقِ الرَّسُولَ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ الْهُدَى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ. So following the path of other the believers, there are hadith that says whatever the Muslim, the believers see as Hasan, it's Hasan, it's beautiful in the sight of God. And whatever the believers see as evil, it's evil in the sight of God. We don't have to sometimes worry about the technicalities of ijma, is it absolute, unanimous or not. But generally what the majority deem, what the conscience of the majority's consciousness says, that's a good indicator for us to understand. Matters that become a big thing for us.
You were doing your masters on this, right? So the thesis.
I did, yes, and you helped me a lot. Yourself and your sister. Unforgivable sin. Whenever you want to take over, Ahmed, let me know.
I think take it to the end, Sadiq, if you want. We have about 4 pages left, so inshallah.
Surely Allah does not forgive associating others with Him in worship, but forgives anything else of whoever He wills. Indeed, whoever associates others with Allah has clearly gone astray. I think this concept of Him forgiving all sins, but shirk, this is the second time it's being mentioned in this surah. Satan's allies. Instead of Allah, they only invoke female gods. What verse is this? Wow, I'm in the wrong page. Sorry.
إن يدعون من دونه إلا إناثا.
No. A lot of those idols of the Arabs were females. Walat, Wal-Uzza, and they're all. Instead of Allah, they only invoke female gods, and they actually invoke none but a rebellious Satan, cursed by Allah, who said, I will surely take hold of a certain number of your servants. I will certainly mislead them and delude them with empty hopes. Also, I will order them, and they will slit the ears of cattle and alter Allah's creation. And whoever takes Satan as a guardian instead of Allah has certainly suffered a tremendous loss. Satan only makes them false promises and deludes them with empty hopes. Truly, Satan promises them nothing but delusion. It is they who will have hell as their home, and they will find no escape from it. This delusion and delusive qualities of Satan is very strongly emphasized. In one verse, he's actually called the great deceiver, Al-Gharur. I forgot the verse. Yeah. So he changes, he incites people to change Allah's creation. In another verse in Surah Rum, it says, فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ. The true fitrah that Allah created human beings upon it, there should be no changing to God's creation. Changing God's creation is almost like an act, is a satanic act. Reward of the believers.
So Sadiq, if you want, I'll continue reading, inshallah. So that way you can keep checking with the other translation as well. Reward of the believers. And those who believe and do good, we will soon admit them into gardens under which rivers flow, to stay there forever and ever. Allah's promise is always true, and whose word is more truthful than Allah's? Doing, not wishing.
This one says not Allah's promise is always true, because wa'dallahi haqqa, it's the very promise of Allah utterly true. Like whatever's just been said, this is the promise of Allah, and this is utterly true. If anyone has doubt sometimes about the hereafter, sometimes hearing these words from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa'dallahi haqqa wa man astaqu min Allahi qila, it repels all the doubts of you. Just hearing the Allah promising that it's binding on me. I swear I'll bring this hereafter for you. I'll show you Jannah.
This essentials course that we're running, the Aqidah part especially, like a lot of us have questions, and some of us may have doubts. So I've been reading the Quran with that mindset, like Allah's reassurance of the hereafter. Like when He talks about, these are abstract things for us, right? Like the Jannah, the Jahannam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself is, is unseen, the ghaib. So He always gives reassuring sentences when I've realized, after He talks about the ghaib, just to make sure that it gets driven home very strongly. So we have about 4 pages. So I'm just going to go through a bit faster, inshallah. So doing, not wishing. Divine grace is neither by your wishes nor those of the people of the book. Whoever commits evil will be rewarded accordingly, and they will find no protector or helper besides Allah. But those who do good, whether male or female, and have faith will enter paradise and will never be wrong, even as much as a speck on a date stone. This has been mentioned a few times, Ustad Sadiq, this speck of a date stone. This date was a very much central thing, back in the Prophet's time, especially. It does to us as well in Ramadan. But the speck, I once heard a sheikh talking about it, is that little layer on the date, right? So I guess it's probably the most finest thing that can be used at the time the Prophet, the Quran can use. So it's a very interesting concept. I'm not sure if you want to say anything on that.
Seed, right?
Yeah, that layer on the seed. Yeah, that's right. How when we're eating, we see that layer, like it comes to our tongue sometimes. So yeah.
These Quranic words entered into our languages. In my Afghan language, there's a saying, "Bedani yak dana chan fatilas." So one dana is how many fatil. It's that Quranic word that's being used there. Just also, it's not by your wishes nor the people of the book. We have to be very, very careful when we talk about who gets salvation, who doesn't. The Quran says it's not your wishes nor the people of the book. Allah's the judge. Allah's the one who puts whoever He wants into His rahmah, and whoever He wants out of His justice into hellfire. We should try to refrain from making big claims, whether it's about particular groups. When it comes to this topic, this is really that day, the day of judgment, is Allah's the true king. There will be no other king, no other judge. We need to leave that judgment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obviously, without denying anything that the Quran and Hadith says, but sometimes we can get a bit too caught up on what we assume is theologically correct or not, and we start acting.
So verse 1 to 5, and who is better in faith than those who fully submit themselves to Allah, do good, and follow the way of Abraham the upright? Allah chose Abraham as a close friend. To Allah alone belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth, and Allah is fully aware of everything. Caring for female orphans. They ask you, O Prophet, regarding women. Say, it is Allah who instructs you regarding them. Instruction has already been revealed in the book concerning the orphan woman you deprive of their due rights but still wish to marry also helpless children, as well as standing up for orphans' rights. And whatever good you do is certainly well known to Allah. Reconciling married couples. If a woman feels indifference or neglect from her husband, there is no blame on either of them if they seek fair settlement, which is best. Humans are ever inclined to selfishness, but if you are gracious and mindful of Allah, surely Allah is all aware of what you do. Maintaining justice among wives. You will never be able to maintain emotional justice between your wives, no matter how keen you are. So do not totally incline towards one, leaving the other in suspense. And if you do what is right and are mindful of Allah, surely Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. But if they choose to separate, Allah will enrich both of them from His bounties, and Allah is ever bountiful, all wise. Allah's might and grace.
Just
So
as
Allah alone.
also, people sometimes are afraid of separation, sometimes for the wrong reasons. But if people do get separated, again, Allah says He'll enrich both of them. Just as also, when people are a bit worried about financial reasons and don't get married, Allah says He will enrich you if you get married. It applies both ways.
Yeah, shouldn't be on financial reasons.
Yeah, exclusively. Yeah.
Yeah. Allah's might and grace. To Allah alone belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. Indeed, we have commanded those given the scripture before you, as well as you, to be mindful of Allah. But if you disobey, then know that to Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and the earth, and Allah is self-sufficient, praiseworthy. To Allah alone belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth, and Allah is sufficient as a trustee of affairs. If it is His will, He can remove you altogether, O humanity, and replace you with others, and Allah is most capable to do so. Whoever desires the reward of this world, then let them know that with Allah are the rewards of this world and the hereafter, and Allah is all hearing, all seeing. Standing up for justice. O believers, stand firm for justice as witnesses for Allah, even if it's against yourselves, your parents, or close relatives. Be they rich or poor, Allah is best to ensure their interests. So do not let your desires cause you to deviate from justice. If you distort the testimony or refuse to give it, then know that Allah is certainly all aware of what you do. True belief. O believers, have faith in Allah, His Messenger, the book He has revealed to His Messenger, and the scriptures He revealed before. Indeed, whoever denies Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, and the last day has clearly gone far astray. Warning against hypocrites. Indeed, those who believed, then disbelieved, then believed, and again disbelieved, only increasing in disbelief, Allah will neither forgive them nor guide them to the right way. Give good news of a painful punishment to hypocrites who choose disbelievers as allies instead of the believers. Do they seek honor and power through their company? Surely Allah and power belongs. Surely all honor and power belongs to Allah. We have last page that we're going into.
Here, seeking
Shunning,
friendship with disbelievers, as you can see, when the root causes things like seeking honor, if you're seeing your own Muslim community as, they're not as a socially high status, I want to be more with the elite, in these type of feelings, these are starting to become signs of hypocrisy. Allahu Akbar.
Shunning ridiculous. He has already revealed to you in the book that when you hear Allah's revelations being denied or ridiculed, then do not sit in that company unless they engage in a different topic, or else you will be like them. Surely Allah will gather the hypocrites and disbelievers all together in hell. The hypocrites are those who wait to see what happens to you. So if Allah grants you victory, they say to you, were we not on your side? But if the disbelievers have a share of victory, they say to them, did we not have the advantage over you, yet we protected you from the believers? Allah will judge between all of you on the day of judgment, and Allah will never grant the disbelievers away over the believers.
Some
Surely the hypocrites
use this verse to imply that, in the Hanafi fiqh, if a non-Muslim, if a Muslim murders a non-Muslim, qisas still applies. He can be killed for killing a non-Muslim. It doesn't matter. Life for life in the Hanafi fiqh. This is in an Islamic society. But in other schools, they said, no, if a Muslim kills a non-Muslim, he just pays the blood money. He doesn't get killed. And they sometimes quote this verse. Allah has not given a way for the disbelievers over the believers. No. It
142.
Hanafi ruling sits very well for me and more of things that when you
Yeah.
Allah.
Surely the hypocrites seek to deceive Allah, but He outwits them. When they stand up for prayer, they do it half-heartedly, only to be seen by people, hardly remembering Allah at all. Torn between belief and disbelief, belonging neither to these believers nor those disbelievers. And whoever Allah leaves to stray, you will never find for them a way. O believers, do not take disbelievers as allies instead of the believers. Would you like to give Allah solid proof against yourselves? Surely the hypocrites will be in the lowest depths of the fire, and you will never find for them any helper, except those who repent, mend their ways, hold fast to Allah, and are sincere in their devotion to Allah. They will be with the believers, and Allah will grant the believers a great reward. Again, there's the exception there. Why should Allah punish you if you are grateful and faithful? Allah is ever appreciative or knowing. Okay,
They say
so that was.
Allah is looking for excuses to forgive people. Like He's not out there wanting to punish people. Apparently, in a state in Turkey, Erzurum, they refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Bahane Tanrısı. The God, it's a bit maybe not appropriate to use that language, but the meaning is really nice, that He's looking for an excuse to forgive people. And look what Allah says. What does Allah do? He does nothing to do with trying to punish you. If you only just give thanks and believe. Just also a reminder of that verse about praying. The hypocrites, their prayer is always done in a state of laziness, showing off, and they actually don't remember Allah much in their prayers. We have to ask our own prayers, how is our prayers? Are we lazy in it? Kusala, not showing off, and how much do we really remember Allah in our prayers? Allah increase our
Maybe we could finish with the dua. Allahumma ij'alna min ash-shakirin wal mu'minin, inshallah. May Allah make us of those who are thankful and believing, inshallah. Okay, so that brings us to the end of Juz 5, brothers and sisters. By now, you might be struggling a bit more, feeling the challenge even more, but let's stay on the wagon, inshallah, and let's continue all together.
Maybe it's become easier by now, and they're saying maybe let's do an extra half an hour, more with more tafsir, more Arabic.
Inshallah. This is our first time, so let's see. Maybe next time we'll do it. All right, take care, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.